The end of the race at the Temple of Speed also marks the end of the European season, heading into the Asian American Tour, which will leave us with 8 final rounds before the conclusion of this season. And this race has once again left us with a bit of controversy, a result different from what we were used to, and a race that overall has brought some interesting things as we head toward the end of the season. This race has once again sparked some controversy, a result different from what we were used to, and a race that overall has brought some interesting things as we head toward the end of the season. It's time for us to summarize then this competition that closes the European Tour and marks the beginning of the final part of the 2025 season. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the summary of round 16 of the Formula 1 World Championship, the Italian Grand Prix. Before we begin, a recap of those out, as several were penalized even before the race started. First, we had Lewis Hamilton with a 5-place penalty for not respecting yellow flags before the start of the Dutch Grand Prix, which would make him start 10th instead of 5th, where he had originally qualified. Gasly and Hadjar would start from the pit lane due to power unit changes. Unfortunately, Nico Hülkenberg couldn't start the Grand Prix because they withdrew his car after detecting a problem before the race. So the German driver couldn't even compete in this Grand Prix. However, McLaren is still the clear favorite in every race. That time they were beaten in qualifying by a surprising Max Verstappen, who took pole position by less than a tenth. He was about to win the race, with Lando Norris and Piastri close behind in second and third. For the race, we just had to see if Verstappen could maintain his pace, and if the McLarens would be stronger and beat him, or if Ferrari had something up their sleeve to at least get on the podium at their big home Grand Prix. And once the cars lined up on the starting grid, the lights would go out, and with that, the Italian Grand Prix would begin. Verstappen had a very good start, but this time Norris at least managed to get alongside Max in the first few meters. Even after going onto the grass on the straight, he made it into turn 1, pushing Max Verstappen's Red Bull and forcing him to go off the track. With this, the Dutchman ends up going through the runoff area, cutting turn 1 but defending first place. Behind them, Leclerc passed Piastri for third, while drivers like Antonelli lost places at the start. Initially, there were no issues or accidents. However, after the Les Motos corner, Piastri managed to regain the third position he had lost to Leclerc, getting back behind his teammate. However, fearing that Max Verstappen might receive a time penalty, believing that Lando Norris had gained the advantage in turn number 1, the team ordered him to give the position back to Lando Norris. He obeys on the main straight, lets him pass, and although he can't attack him for the moment, he stays right behind him. And Charles Leclerc would take advantage of this to get back in front of Oscar Piastri, overtaking him in turn number 1 and thus moving into third place in this race. However, Red Bull's speed was real, not just a qualifying illusion. And even though Lando Norris was in the lead by lap 4, Max Verstappen showed off his incredible pace and overtook the British driver to regain first place. From then on, Max Verstappen kept pushing the Red Bull 21's strong pace, and he started to gradually pull away from the lead, putting Lando Norris out of drag reduction system range and increasing his gap lap by lap on the stopwatch. Further back, Oscar Piastri struggled to overtake Charles Leclerc. He didn't regain third place behind Lando Norris until lap 6 when he finally overtook him. But he was still several seconds behind him at this point in the race. Norris was well ahead of Verstappen, but Piastri was also far behind Norris, so only strategy could cause a change. Earlier, we saw Hamilton pass Bortoleto, who reached 6th by lap 7. But from this point on, the race stabilized, and unfortunately for us, tire degradation was extremely low on this circuit, so it was clear that there wouldn't be much variety in strategies in this Grand Prix. The drivers couldn't overtake here. Leclerc was under pressure from Russell but never lost position. Antonelli followed Noda for many laps before passing him on lap 18. These were the race's only thrills until now. Some teams went for early pit stops like Haas with Berman or Red Bull with Yuki, his Noda. But that felt like a mistake, seeing how long those who decided to extend their stint could last on track. Bortoleto and Alonso battled for position, with the Brazilian fending off his mentor, who stayed in drag reduction system range but couldn't pass. But both would pit on lap 25 and Aston Martin's stop was faster than Sauber's. And with this, Alonso manages to come out ahead of the Brazilian driver, which could mean important points for the Asturian driver. I say it could, but in the end it was pointless, as on lap 25 his suspension failed and broke after hitting a curb. He ended up retiring from the race, which looked quite promising for him on a circuit that didn't suit the Aston Martin very well. After this, the race stayed the same. All that remained was to see when the leaders and Mercedes would pit. On laps 28 and 29, Antonelli overtook Alonso ahead of Bortoleto after trailing on track. After the restart, Ferrari responded until lap 34 by pitting Leclerc, who rejoined well ahead of George Russell but had no chance to contend with Piazzeri for the podium spot he previously held. Meanwhile, the McLarens and Verstappen remained on track with about a 6-second gap between Lando Norris and Verstappen. It seemed McLaren aimed to delay their pit stop as long as possible, either to play with Red Bull's tire degradation or to try something different. Nevertheless, Verstappen pits on lap 37 and puts on the hard tire to finish the Grand Prix with it. So from this moment on, McLaren was hoping for a safety car that would allow them to pit, lose less time, and come out on soft tires ahead of Verstappen, and with that, have the chance to win a race that under normal conditions they probably couldn't. That miracle nearly occurred on lap 41 when Berman hit Carlos Sainz at the La Roggia chicane, causing him to spin. But unfortunately for McLaren, both drivers continued in the Grand Prix. It was only a scare, but it ruined McLaren's chance to win. Oliver Berman received a 10-second penalty for this action. With this, the race was practically decided, since when the McLarens came in, they were going to come out. Max Verstappen had already gained significant time on them, a big difference. Without that, would a safety car have appeared? When would we have our last exciting moment on track? Alex Albon, who had done his entire stint on hard tires, would pit on lap 42 to finish his race on the medium tire. His speed at the end was so strong that on lap 45, with a great move in the big corner, he took the position from the Italian driver. Nelly closed him off too much in the corner, forcing him slightly wide, and they ended up giving him a 5-second penalty at the end of the race because of this. Bortoleto needed to stay within those 5 seconds to take Antonelli's position. On that same lap 45, the main controversy of this Grand Prix unfolded, adding another chapter to McLaren's history of disputes. On that lap, Norris is told he'll pit for soft tires and he asks if Oscar Piastri will pit first. The team tells him yes, assuring there's no risk of an undercut. This is the radio transcript between McLaren and Lando Norris. Lando ends up agreeing on the condition that Piastri won't undercut him. I want to assume McLaren did this to avoid any threat from Leclerc, so Piastri wouldn't need to overtake on track or risk a daring move. It's the only logic I see behind McLaren's decision, so Piastri pits first. And here's the moment of controversy. Because one lap later, Norris is the one who comes into the pits, but the wheelman on the front left tire takes too long, making the pit stop very slow for Lando Norris, which is why he ends up coming out behind his teammate. At this point, the bad pit stop had doomed the British driver, who now had to regain the position his teammate held on track. But McLaren reverses the order and asks Oscar Piastri to let his teammate pass, and that afterwards, after doing this, they will be free to fight. Piastri follows team orders, lets Lando Norris pass, and stays in drag reduction system to try attacking his teammate. But once he gave up the position, Norris pulled away and Piastri couldn't fight him for that second place. This clearly reignited the controversy, casting McLaren in a negative light due to that team order. But this was basically the last thing this Grand Prix left us with. Despite the situation, it stopped Max Verstappen from winning again this season, by crossing the finish line on lap 53 and thus taking the victory at the Italian Grand Prix. Max Verstappen claims his third win of the season, dominating with impressive speed and low downforce driving. He used an aggressive approach to earn an impressive victory. While it may not put him back in the title race, it feels great to win after so many tough races. For the rest of the top 10, the Italian Grand Prix ended as follows. Second place for Norris, who regains the position after the slow pit stop. Third place for Piastri in a tough race for McLaren. Charles Leclerc finished 4th, George Russell 5th, and Lewis Hamilton 6th. Capping a disappointing weekend for Ferrari, Alex Albon finished 7th after a brilliant race. Gabriel Bortoleto took 8th, moving up due to Ander's penalty. Kimi Antonelli. 9th place for the aforementioned driver in a disappointing weekend for Mercedes. Rounding out the top 10, Isaac Hayar earned a point after a strong comeback. The race in Italy began with intense opening laps but then slowed down considerably. Low degradation, limited strategy options, and minimal on-track action made for a bland Grand Prix. Max Verstappen's speed and the McLaren team's controversy were most notable, so my rating for this race will be a 5, a boring race. Qualifying showed there was potential for an interesting race, but in the end it wasn't because of the lack of action on track. Degradation at the Italian circuit. My driver of the day is Isaac Heyer, who made a strong comeback to earn a point. Alex Albon secures a strong finish, keeping Williams ahead of rivals in the constructors' standings. Max Verstappen dominated with such strong pace that McLaren never had a chance to win in Italy. And the disappointment of the day is definitely McLaren today. In terms of pace, they haven't been up to the level of Max Verstappen's Red Bull. It's clear that after many uncontested wins, being beaten like this disappoints them. They've created another scandal themselves with the team order after the pit stop mistake with Lando Norris. I don't fully agree with what they did, but I get why they decided that. Ultimately, these are the papaya rules. This is the way McLaren plays, but obviously without taking the victory. The scandal is served. You can't avoid being today's disappointment. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the summary of the 2025 Italian Grand Prix. Here's where I ask, what did you think of the race? Did you like it or were you disappointed? Tell me who your drivers of the day were and who disappointed you in the comments section. So feel free to comment on what you think about the Italian Grand Prix. With nothing else, goodbye. And if you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so you know when I'm uploading a new video, and share this with your friends. Also, I invite you to follow us on our Instagram and Twitter accounts. The links will be in the description of this video, and I'll see you in the coming days for more content on your Skyline Racing channel. Thank you for tuning in. See you later.